Well, hey everybody, it's your boy Mr. Perry, and here we are with lesson 4. We're going to get into accessors and getters. So let's get going. Here we go. So first off, we're just going to kind of review what we've learned about methods already. And in fact, I'm going to invite you to pause the video and try to remember how many different types of methods you've been taught in the class so far, or how many different types of methods that you've learned. We've been able to categorize them into several different categories. So feel free to pause the video and see if you can remember, what the different categories are. But we'll go ahead and get into it here. So the first general category of methods, all methods are either static or non-static methods. You can also say all methods are either class or object methods. Most of the methods that we've worked in the class with so far have been object methods. We've done a little bit with some class methods, but we'll probably do more in the near future. So like I said, all methods can be static or non-static, or we can say they are class or object. All methods are either return methods or void methods. Again, methods have to be one or the other here. They either return a value or they are void and they don't return a value. And then let's see, there's also the category of get methods and set methods, which are known as accessor and mutator methods. So all methods are static or non-static. All methods are return or void. Some methods are get or accessor methods, and some methods are set or mutator methods. So why is all of this important? Well, first off, you just need to know that your CSA exam is going to have a ton of questions about methods, including one of your FRQs. Your very first FRQ is going to require you to write methods and to demonstrate competency with data structures and code structures. So you need to know things like your for loops and your while loops and if statements and all that kind of stuff. Plus, writing methods is just a standard part of writing a class. If you're going to write a class and make anything happen in Java, the only way that you can do that is by writing the appropriate methods. So it's a really, really big part of the class in general. And then when we're writing classes, let's just remember what our general class structure is. You always start with your class header, so it'll say public class and then whatever the name of your class is. Then you're going to have your private instance variables or your fields, which will come next. Then you're going to have a constructor, which may or may not take in parameters. After that, you've got your get methods and your set methods, which are all based on your instance variables. And then finally, you're going to have your toString method as well as any other method. So you can write all kinds of customized methods in your class. That's entirely up to you as the programmer, which is one of the things that makes Java so great. And so for lessons 4 and 5, we're going to focus on get methods and set methods. So lesson 4 is all about get methods. Now, get methods are also called accessor methods. They also return values. So get methods are return methods. Now, on the other hand, with lesson 5, set methods are what are called mutator methods, and set methods are all void methods. But we'll get into that with lesson 5. For right now, we're going to go ahead and just focus on accessors and getters. So getters or get methods, it is a public method that takes no arguments and returns the value of a private instance variable. So you'll remember from our previous lesson, there's this concept called data encapsulation, which basically means some of our data we want to keep private, and then some of it we want to make public. And again, if it's private, that means it's only accessible within that class file. You can't directly access or alter any of these values from outside of the movie class or whatever class that you're in. So what you need to do in order to give access to these instance variables is you have to add public get methods. And that's going to allow the values of your instance variables to be accessible to other classes. So to write a get method, you focus on one of your instance variables. So I'm looking at string title. And you always start with the word public because we want to make sure that these methods are available outside of this particular class. Then you want to make sure that you match the data type. So since title is a string, you say public string. And then you name the method. And it's standard to just say get and then add in the title of or the name of your instance variable. So get title. Next, you're going to add empty parentheses to your get methods, and then you're going to add your curly braces, and then finally, you just add the word return, and then you copy the name of your instance variable. So you return the instance variable. And it's that easy. Once you've done that, you've completed your get method, and then you just repeat it for all of your other instance variables. Basically, just look at it and say, does it make sense that I would want, my whoever's using these programs to access these values? And as long as it makes sense that they would want to be able to access those values, then you can go ahead and write a get method for it. So we've got get title. We now need public int get runtime, which will return runtime. And again, that's returning an integer. And then you will need public string get rating, which will return the string called rating. And there you go. It's pretty easy. Now, writing get methods is fairly easy, but using them appropriately is a little bit different. So how to use accessors. So if you go in your main method, and you can then call the get methods. Usually you're going to put them either in print statements, or you're going to assign the values to variables. So we'll look at a couple different ways that can happen. So here I am in main, and I'm going to go ahead and create an object of the movie class, and I'm calling it my movie. And as you can see, we're passing in the Avengers. 283 is the runtime, PG-13 is the rating. So the next thing I can do is I could call the get title and the get rating method and put those in a print statement. So I can say mymovie.getTitle and have the concatenate is rated, that little string right there, and then concatenate mymovie.getRating. And what that's going to do is it's going to return the title right here. So that string gets returned right here. And then it returns the rating, which is, again, PG-13. So that gets returned right here and gets concatenated right there. And there you go. Fairly straightforward. Now, you could also do something like this. You can create a movie object and then say int duration equals, and then set it equal to mymovie.getRuntime. What this does is this is going to return 283. And it's just the same thing as writing int duration equals 283. But of course, you can call the get method for many different movie objects, and gives it more flexibility. And then once you had that variable duration, you could then use that variable. You could say if duration is greater than 120, go ahead and print this film is longer than 2 hours. That's just one way that you could use the get runtime method and store it as the variable duration. You could actually do the same thing a little bit more succinctly. So you can, instead of creating the extra variable and calling it duration, you can actually just delete this line, and you can just say if, and then in parentheses, mymovie.getRuntime is greater than 120, print that. Either of these will work. You can do it this way, which is a little bit longer. You can do it this way, which is a little bit shorter, but both of them will work. So, it all just is a matter of experience and a matter of, preference and all that stuff. There are some common errors associated with get methods. So forgetting a return type like int before the method name. So just saying public get runtime instead of remembering you have to have int right there, because you always have to tell Java, if it's a return method, what data type it's going to be returning. And so there is that. It should be public int get runtime. Another common mistake is forgetting to use the keyword return. So public int get runtime, and then if you just say runtime, obviously you're forgetting the word return, and these are all return methods, so it should be return runtime. And then the last thing is just forgetting to do something with the value being returned from a method, like assigning it to a variable or printing it out. So I've seen students do this before, where they create a movie object, or they create an object of a certain class. And then on the next line, they're just trying to call the methods, which, mymovie.getTitle and mymovie.getRating, these are all correct calls to the get methods, but the problem is nothing's being done with the strings that are being returned. So it really should be system.out.println, and then in parentheses have mymovie.getTitle is rated mymovie.getRating. That now it'll actually print, it'll do something. You could also say string output equals mymovie.getTitle is rated mymovie.getRating, and then you could print the variable output, or you could do something with the variable output. That would be another option that you have with this. But it's just important that when you're calling get methods, you actually are doing something with them. They are typically either in a print statement or being stored as a variable of some kind. And then we need to take a minute and remember the toString method. Technically, it's not a get method, but it does behave in a very similar way. So we're going to go back to Unit 2, Lesson 6. Way back in Unit 2, Lesson 6, I taught you that way up in Java cyberspace, there is a class called the object class. And every single class that's created in Java is it inherits from the Java class. So the string class, the system class, the scanner class, the math class, those are all, they all inherit from the object class. Also, any class that is created by you, the programmer, will also automatically inherit from the Java class. And the object class. And the object class has two methods in it that every class inherits. It has the .equals method, where you can check to see if two objects have the same memory address, so to see if they are aliases of one another. And they also all inherit the toString method, but the problem is that the toString method only prints out the memory address of the object. So down here, for instance, when I first created my pet class, I didn't override the toString method. I just left it as is. So I created a pet called Tweety, and then I'm printing Tweety. And again, what we get is pet at, and then we get this weird hexadecimal code, which again is the memory address. So printing an object like this will call the object class's toString method, which results in the memory address showing up. And again, that's not very useful for us, so we have to override it. All right, so in order to override the toString method that we get from the object class, we always create our own toString method in each of our class files. And again, the goal is to return a string that neatly prints out the values of the instance variables. So, like I said, very similar to what you see with the get method. The whole goal is to return the values of your instance variables. But what you want to do is you want to neatly label them and format it. So, you know, one of the conventional ways of doing it is just saying public string toString and then return, and then, you know, add a little bit of text that just basically gives kind of a label, you know, to the instance variable before it prints. So, you know, movie title, and then concatenate the title of it. And then just using the escape character for new line, and then saying runtime, and then concatenating the runtime. And then again, using the escape character to go to a new line, and then rating, and then concatenating the rating. So that's a pretty standard way of doing your toString method. And then finally, we want to understand with both get methods and set methods this concept of what's called return by value or call by value and with the next one. So return by value. Get methods are return methods, and when you call a get method to access the value of an instance variable, the method doesn't actually return the instance variable itself. It makes a copy of the value and returns a copy of the value. So what that means is there is no way to change the value of an instance variable using only a get method. That's the whole point of set methods, is it allows you to get access to those values and change them. So for instance, I can use the get method to get the runtime and store that in the variable duration, and then I can, you know, divide the duration in half. I can do all kinds of things with, you know, duration and all that stuff. But it's not the original value. It's not going to impact, you know, the original value of that instance variable. So that's called return by value. Basically, it makes, when you return something from a get method, it's actually returning just the value of it. It's returning a copy of the value, not the value itself. So there is that. Now, going along with return by value, most of the times when we have written our classes so far, we've just used, you know, your basic data types. Your primitive data types or strings have been, you know, most of our instance variables. However, it is possible to have an object of a class, of another related class, as one of your instance variables, which means that you may have a get method for it. And so if you had something like this, where you had, dice game was the name of the method, and every dice game has a first player, a second player, and then an object of the dice class. So what's going to happen here is, we've got dice, game dice equals new dice. So we've created an object of the dice class. Now in the next line, dice game, my dice game equals new dice game. We're passing in Bobby, Samantha, and game dice, which again is this object right here. We're passing all of that in as to our constructor. So that means for this particular object, my dice game, all of this is stored in there. If I create public dice get game dice and then return game dice, what it actually does is it doesn't make a copy of the value of game dice. It returns a copy of the reference to the memory location. So basically what happens here is a copy of the object's reference is returned, and so the returned object will be an alias for the object that was originally referenced. So what that means is if I do anything with the game dice that gets returned from this game dice method, if I alter it somehow, that actually will impact the original. So that's an important distinction for most of our instance variables, for most of your data types, your booleans and your ints, your doubles, and even your strings. You can manipulate them all you want to, and again, nothing's going to happen to the original. However, if you have a get method that returns a reference to an object, like this one you see right here, again, it is possible that if you alter this object here, that it will also alter the original. So just an important distinction to make. All right, so before we wrap this up, let's go ahead and do a little bit of review. I'm going to invite you to pause the video here and look at each of the get methods that you see being created over here, and figure out which of them are actually valid get methods for the class that you see over here. So I'll let you pause the video and go ahead and check it. And I'm assuming that you've paused the video, so we're going to go ahead and look at our answers. So we've got 4 instance variables here: first name, last name, both strings, grade, which is an int, and GPA, which is a double. So the first one, all right, public string get first name, there should be no parameter in a get method, so we know that's wrong, which means we also know that this one's wrong. There should be no parameter in a get method method header. And then for this one right here, public void get GPA, return GPA. Again, what we're returning here is a double, so that should say public double get GPA. However, up here, public int get grade, return grade, and then public string get last name, return last name. Those are both correct. So there you go. All right, guys, well, lesson review. Just remember that a getter allows other objects to obtain the value of instance variables or static variables. It is a non-void method that returns the value of an instance variable, and its return type must match the type of the instance variable. Methods return by value, where a copy of the value is returned. When the value is a primitive type, the value is copied, but when the value is a reference to an object, the reference is copied, not the object itself. And then finally, the toString method is an overridden method that is included in classes to provide a description of a specific object. And it generally includes what values are stored in the instance data of that object. And with that, guys, we've come to the end. Be sure to leave a question or a comment on today's video, and I'll see you in class.